You are listening to The Insider with Brian Lloyd. The opinions expressed are that of the individuals and can sometimes be of an adult nature.
On today's Insider podcast, we have Grainne Humphreys, the director of the Audi Dublin International Film Festival. Grainne, how you doing?
Very good, thank you.
If we can start off with, this, we've seen the programme and all the rest of it. What exactly is your criteria for picking films? Do you have a criteria, or does it just kind of go by the theme, as it were?
No, not at all. I mean, I suppose in a sense there's sort of like two ways of approaching it. I mean, one is that we try to get the best of what's happening internationally. And that is really, I think, it starts pretty much from about April.
Yeah.
So what you see in February is, I suppose, the sort of result of about 9 months of trying to track down the hottest titles, both American and as I said, from around the world. That's one way of looking at it. The other way is actually to realise that within that programme you're going to have a balance.
Yeah.
You're going to actually have certain films that will be on the same theme, or they might feature the same actor, they might come from the same country. So you're trying to give a kind of range. So for instance, there's over 200 films produced in France every year, but there's a minuscule amount might be coming from another country, somewhere like maybe Hungary, for instance, or Denmark. So you are trying to sort of put everything into a kind of proportion. And also try to find spaces for the emerging talent that's coming through, because a festival is where you probably discover things. So there's a lot of films that we're offered every year and you kind of go, well, they'll survive on their own. They don't actually need us.
Yeah.
And then there's other films that you actually know that being in a festival or inviting a director or an actor along to meet a Dublin audience is actually an opportunity to sort of be in at the beginning of somebody's career. I remember when Tom Hardy came, for instance.
Yeah.
I mean, it is really exciting when somebody comes with their kind of breakthrough role.
Yeah.
And that, the festival can actually help people to see. Sometimes the most interesting of people's work is actually done at the very beginning or the kind of start of a career. I'm only just thinking of now, De Niro and what he's actually doing at the moment. But God, it's a long time since he's made something interesting.
Yeah.
But the other thing about it is that I suppose there is a lot of established filmmakers that are huge names, but they're never going to get released in Ireland. They're not going to be in the IFI, they're not going to be in the Lighthouse. And you actually, if they do, they'll be like, in screen 2 for maybe half a minute.
Yeah.
And that's what the festival can do, is actually put a sort of spotlight and try to bring a kind of sense of perspective. Lenny Abramson's now probably one of the leading Irish, film directors. But he's equally a huge talent in terms of European filmmakers. But it's really important that we know who are the other filmmakers at that level. You'd be hard pressed to try and think of the Spanish, for instance, directors who are at Lenny's level.
Yeah.
Because everybody automatically goes Almodovar, and that's it. So I think there is a part where the festival's trying to kind of bring, even in the small 11-day space, an opportunity to kind of test and do a comparison about where Irish film is amongst its peers. And
actually, just on that as well, you're talking about European talent and Irish talent and so on and so forth. I mean, it's called the International Film Festival, is it? So, how do you strike the balance between, bringing up Irish talent versus, what's out there in the festival circuit?
Well, it's hard. One part of it is Dublin, and we all live in Dublin, in a city that you bump into the same people repeatedly. So, there's that side of it. Obviously you want to champion local talent, but I'm also really conscious that people are buying tickets.
Yeah.
And if they're buying tickets, they're actually, they're as justified in wanting to have quality from a local film as they are from wanting an international film, or at least an understanding when they leave the cinema of why that film was selected.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the criteria. So if there is an Irish film, as I said, it will be selected on the same criteria, maybe even harder criteria, because there's more films to compete against.
Yeah, I was going to say, you obviously do have to put it to a
and
harder
we do
test,
turn down films, we turn down a lot. I'd see about 1,200 films a year. And in terms of Irish, the interesting thing is that it's not just because of the access people have to equipment now. It's not just the sort of 14 or 15 films that have film board funding or arts council funding. There's probably at least double that people have actually gone out on weekends, or they've actually shot with their friends. So you are actually very aware of trying to, as I said, find some way that people can see what's happening, that you can support new talent, but at the same time you can say to people, do you know what, I'm not putting it on for you, your mates and your mum to have a nice time in the cinema.
Yeah.
There's going to be people there who paid money, and it's €10. You know, I mean, it's a whack now.
Yeah.
The other thing about it, which I always think is fun, is everybody wants to be in the Savoy, you know, and you're like going, okay, that is a really big cinema.
Yeah,
and
like-
it can really punish you, you know.
Yeah, if you don't fill that out, like, it's pretty depressing
And
looking. Like.
I remember my favourite story, Nick Ryan, who made The Summit, for instance. And Nick's a fantastic guy, and The Summit was a great afternoon screening for us a couple of years back. And I remember...
That was
he
the
standing
closing
at the back.
film.
No, he was the afternoon. He was the
Was
Sunday
it?
afternoon, yeah. But I remember him at the back, and he was going, God, this looks fantastic. You know, it was great. I remember seeing Die Hard here. I remember seeing Speed. And then he got down to the front and he went, oh my good Jesus, all these people are looking at me. And you're like, that's the thing. It's a very big screen and it will punish you unless your film looks fantastic because that's where we have seen those big blockbuster
Yeah,
films.
of course, yeah.
So one of the things that's interesting is trying to find the cinemas that match the films, you know, and a lot of the time you are trying to get, you know, smaller cinemas, films like, you know, Lighthouse and IFI, which give people an opportunity to kind of have, a small audience that's really intense and connects with the film, which hopefully will then lead on to it getting a run. And that happened with Fortune's Wheel, for instance. I'm trying to think of the others. We've had a couple of the real art documentaries, for instance. Broken Song did very well. I think there's a couple this year. There's a couple of the documentaries I think will absolutely go on to have runs after the festival, but not because we've been very clever about the way that we've programmed them, and we've made sure that people are seeing them and they're talking about them, not that the entire audience has been to see them and then that's it.
Actually, just actually on that, like, about programming, you were saying that, you know, fitting the right film to the right screen and so on. I mean, we had with Michael Kinarns on, and he was saying that, you know, there is such a thing as a festival film, you know, that sort of a film that is specifically tailored to that audience. And I'm just wondering, like, I mean, you know, you mentioned about, you know, people are paying money for this and they obviously want to see something good and so on and so forth. So I suppose my question is, I mean, you know, are you ever tempted to kind of go the more populist route, I suppose?
Absolutely. But I think there's two ways of looking at it. One is I would say that when a distributor rings me up and says I've got a festival film, it usually means a film that won't make a penny at the box office. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that I know myself, there is absolutely nothing better than actually slogging through a couple of really, really tough, long, probably very serious, probably very depressing films in the afternoon and early evening, and knowing that you're going to see a big mainstream film later on. And it's equally to say that those films aren't as well made or as artistically important as the other films. You know, sticking subtitles on it and a sort of depressing character doesn't necessarily make something more important. Or equally length. I wish people would realise that a film being twice as long as another film doesn't make it twice as better, right? But I think the thing about film festivals that's fun is that you're always trying to get new audiences in. I worked for years in the IFI, and I remember talking to taxi drivers in the mall saying, oh God, all you people, black polo necks and those funny French cigarettes, and you're all talking in very pretentious terms. And I think there is still that kind of stigma around film festivals.
Very much so, yeah.
And I think what happens when you put a populist film on is that suddenly dissolves. And that if you bring in some of the guests that we've had, like Pacino or Julie Andrews, people go, oh Jesus, I never guessed that they would actually go. It seems much more accessible. It seems more friendly, open, kind of dynamic that I think brings in, as I said, people who would normally feel like they're not smart enough. And I think that's the balance that I'm looking for. But you're right, you can't have too many of them or it actually just turns into a regular sort of Saturday afternoon cinema, you know?
And actually on that as well, you're talking about your guests. I mean, you have Claudia Cardinale and you have Angela Lansbury. What is Angela Lansbury like in real life? Have you met her?
She is fantastic.
Is she, yeah?
She's an absolute star.
Yeah.
I met her, I think, about 14, 15 years ago, and I had 2 days. We went to the Yates exhibition, we went for sushi. Everyone calls her Jessica.
Really,
The woman has won, I think, more Tonys on Broadway than anybody else. She's, worked with Ingrid Bergman. She is an absolute legend, and she's gorgeous.
Yeah.
She's very, very smart. She's withering about people that she doesn't feel are committed to the art form.
Yeah.
Very, very serious. She's still working and bombing all over the globe. I mean, she's an absolute legend.
Yeah. And plus, but like, I mean, look, listen, Murder, She Wrote, I loved it, obviously. Like, come on, like, who didn't?
Get
like,
knobs and broomsticks.
Yeah,
where are you?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying to you. Like, I mean, she's more known for kind of TV and theatre stuff. So I suppose my question is, like, I mean, she's done some films, sure, but I mean, I think
the Harvey Girls with Judy Garland. She worked with Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
Lawrence Harvey.
Yeah.
The first two films that she made in 1946 were both Oscar nominated. I think the thing that's interesting about her, and if you
it's
want,
a generational thing.
It is a generational thing, but I think the other way of looking at it is that now everybody's working in television.
Yeah,
The
true.
difference is that she was working in television when maybe people thought that television was the small screen.
Yeah,
and
slumming
that,
it or
and
whatever,
it
yeah.
wasn't actually that important. And I think the other thing is that she also was the highest paid performer in television, and she actually was producing her own show. So in terms of people taking control of their career, she went from the studio system where you were effectively a little box, and you did exactly what you wanted. But I think the other thing that's important for me is that, I'm always, as I said, I've talked about the emerging talent and people coming in and supporting them when nobody knows them. So hopefully they'll remember you when they become someone.
Yeah.
But equally, there is an entire treasure trove of stories about Hollywood and about acting that are going to be lost forever unless you, in a way, capture some of these people, either on interviews or in Q&As. And what I love about her is, as I said, she just has such a range of knowledge and experience that, to my mind, it's part of the festival's remit. People like Claudia Cardinale, I know, but between them, they've probably got most of I suppose, sort of world cinema from the mid-50s onwards. But I mean, even to find out some of the stories of making Once Upon a Time in the West, for instance, or working with Fellini, I mean, to my mind, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
The other thing is that that's an audience that probably don't go to the cinema. They're probably going, oh, Jesus, the new stuff, it's all very loud. But they'll go, oh, Claudia Cardinale, fantastic, I fancied her, crazy when I was 16. So, in that sense, I'm sort of conscious that there's a group of people who wouldn't know Joss Whedon if he stood in front of them.
Of course.
But Claudia Cardinale, they actually do. And then the other side of that is I'm also really conscious, can we stop absolutely focusing on America and England when we talk about actors?
Yeah.
And that they're all English language and that they all actually, live, breathe and look a particular way. And that there's lots of really interesting people from around the world that we don't celebrate simply because our national media doesn't really think in any other terms.
Yeah.
European talent, it's very narrow as to who we think. Marion Cotillard is probably one of the few actresses that's not a native English speaker that's actually broken through in Hollywood, with Penelope Cruz. I'm conscious that the festival is international, but it's also on the fringes of Europe, but very definitely always talks about being closer to Hollywood than it would be to being closer to Europe.
Yeah. I mean, on that as well, because you hear all this kind of like criticism about the Irish Film Board that they're basically focusing on bringing in US films and all that sort of thing, like with The Force Awakens and so on and so forth. I mean,
that was good though, and it was great fun. I think it was an opportunity to showcase Ireland. I think there's loads of other countries would have absolutely killed. We don't do it that often.
No.
I mean, it's great to have it in the same year as Rome. And I think the other thing that's very frustrating is that, unlike sport, it takes a long time to make films, and I think that I do remember the success of My Left Foot and The Crying Game and exactly what happened to the Irish film industry. We got a film board. We had actors who suddenly were, Pierce Brosnan, Gabriel Byrne, Liam Neeson, were big enough to be in big films, and it lifted everybody. People got jobs. People had a chance to work on films like Braveheart and Saving Private Ryan. And I think the film board, I do think it does need to have more money. I think it does need resources. I think the National Film School needs resources. But I think there's also a thing of, how can we maximise what we have at the minute?
Yeah.
But I mean, one of the things is I have a lot of friends who run festivals around the world. They would kill to have the level of attention that we have on Irish cinema at the moment.
Really, yeah?
Absolutely. We've got nominations for the Oscars, nominations for the Golden Globes, nominations for the BAFTAs. We presume we're going to have films in Sundance, in Cannes, in Toronto.
Yeah.
And we're nonchalant about it.
Yeah.
Others are going, oh, thank God, first time in years that this has happened, And they're putting in 3 times, 4 times the resources. So from that point of view, it is fantastic what's happening at the moment. It's just how can we sustain it?
So do you think it's more money then? If we've got more money, we'd be able to do more with it?
It's partly money. It's also picking the right people. I mean, one of the sort of legends of the Irish film industry was when John Boorman was the first, chair of the film board, and he put all of the funding from the first year into Neil Jordan. And when you realise that actually that's really spotting a favourite, that's spotting talent.
Yeah.
And it is a bit like that. You need to be able to have resources and structures that actually are able to kind of identify talent and nurture it and support it. Lenny, is a supreme filmmaker because of the support that he's actually had and the films that he's been making. And you could say that about, Paddy Bannock, you could say that about Mark O'Halloran, a whole raft of people. But then there's a whole group of other filmmakers that we know that we're waiting for their second film or their third film, and we're going, where are they? Where are they? But the actors is the other thing. I mean, the Irish actors now, it's all
like
over
Aidan
the place.
Turner,
they're global, names, and that again makes it easier, because you actually go, right, this film has such and such, and people go, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, as
You can
opposed to
point
that
to it,
glazed. You know that glazed look that you do. You go, yeah, no, I do know that person.
Yeah.
No idea. You know?
To go back to the festival itself, the theme this year is love. I mean, was that just primarily because it was near, February?
Valentine's? No, it was because we wanted to pick something that had a sort of visceral element to it. We wanted, in the change from our sort of pre-existing JDiff to ADiff, we wanted to kind of mark, quite a direct change. And it seemed that one of the things that kind of kept us going over the summer was we kept talking about films that we loved, and that idea of being passionate.
Yeah.
And that when we talked to people in the street, everybody was saying things like, have you got a new sponsor? Can't wait to see the new festival. And people said, I love the event. I love it. And it just seemed that, it was that simple. That people just love films. They love going to see, as I said, surprise films. They like going to see stars. But they mentioned the word love. And it just, as I said, just became something that we talked about in the office. And then, as I said, the designer kind of listening to us came back with the heart. And suddenly
it worked
it
off
was
from
there.
that. Yeah.
It wasn't a Mad Men moment. Do you know what I mean?
It wasn't, no?
No, I mean...
You weren't sitting around with puffing on cigarettes.
No, I'd love to think it was like that. I think it was just, as I said, somebody from outside sitting in and going, God, they've just mentioned that word about 17 times. Oops. But also, as I said, yes, I mean, obviously going back to February after our sort of flirtation with March, it did sort of fit in, obviously, with the whole Valentine's vibe. And it's kind of a simple concept, and we're also going with kids screenings this year, which we haven't done before.
Yeah, the fantastic flicks,
And that idea of kind of saying love movies seemed to be a really simple concept that we could extend to different audiences as well.
And actually, on the topic as well, I know you've moved from March back to February. I mean, was there a noticeable difference yourselves as in terms of what kind of films you could get and how you could structure it all between the two, or was it just a case of it's 1 month?
You see, I have to confess now, I have been moaning for years about giving up my Christmas to the festival. Now, I don't mind doing it because obviously I'm a very sort of modest masochist, but it's just that it was very difficult to get answers from people from about the 15th of December to about the 10th of January. And having that in March was great. The problem with March is that anybody who lives in this country knows that everybody gets a bit mad in March. You've got Paddy's Day, everybody goes off drink, then they go back on drink for one day. Everybody starts thinking about April, they start thinking about Easter. And also 2016 was, this huge black hole of commemoration, celebration. I mean, it started somewhere around the middle of last year.
Yeah.
And I just thought, God, if we get trapped in that, it's going to be just,
it'll get wrapped up in it. Yeah.
So we went back to February, and we did lose a month, obviously. But we went back to something that we were very familiar with. The interesting thing is that even though, and particularly this year, even though February is the film month, you have the BAFTAs, you have the Oscars, you have the Berlinale, it is also a time when there's fantastic films.
Yeah.
And it's also a time when people really want to go to the cinema because it's dark and it's gloomy and it's rainy. And I think moving back, we just picked up our pace a bit, and we just said, right, we'll just put in our requests. We'll get the kind of films that we normally get. So I don't think we've lost many films, to be quite honest, by going back to February. I think it's more that the sort of effort of going into March and then moving back just looks a tiny bit flaky. It looks they don't really know where they are. But with a festival, unlike a venue, if you make a decision, it's a year before you can find out whether it worked or not. If you work in a venue, you can all just go, do you know what, no one's going to films at 12:30, we'll stick them on at 2.
Yeah.
But a festival, as I said, you pilot and you find out, and then you use it the following year.
Yeah. And yeah, actually on that as well, the venues as well, it's quite evenly spread out across the city, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Lighthouse is fantastic. I mean, it's a godsend in so many different ways. I mean, one is that it's a perfect festival venue because the audiences that go are exactly like we were describing. The people who are sort of, cultural cinema advocates. They're also people who like, their mainstream films. They're very aware of kind of funky sort of older titles. It's a lovely space because you can have a drink afterwards. You're in the same space. The IFI, as I said, my old stomping ground, it's a great place for something like a David Hare event because that age group and audience are there. They're the Real Art documentaries, it's the Irish Film Institute, the home of the Irish Film Archive, it makes sense. And then the Savoy is the Savoy, Cineworld is a very interesting space because I think Cineworld, the figures are just so huge, the numbers going through it, that it's very important to have a very popular cinema within it. The Board Gosh this is our second year doing something with them. I think it's huge.
Yeah,
But
it is, isn't it?
Really, it's got such sort of status. You can't walk onto that stage or present somebody without it being an event.
Yeah.
And it's a spectacle. And then the event that we're doing out in the Dundrum is because we've done a couple of things with them, and we've just found that bringing the event out to both Dundrum and to Dunleary just allows different audiences, maybe audiences who don't go into the city centre anymore, or again just to try and create a small necklace of venues where people can say, right, you know,
I don't have to trek all the way in. Yeah.
I can see it. I can see it somewhere close.
Okay, pick your top 3 films.
Oh God.
All right, well, give me 2 then.
Yeah, well, Anna Anomalisa is fantastic. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think Richard Gere in Time Out of Mind. He's
Yeah?
amazing. I thought he was a brilliant light comedian. I know he was a very dramatic actor when he was younger, and I think this is a powerhouse performance. Absolutely powerhouse. Irish, it's really hard. Truth Commissioner is a really, really good film. Mammal is a great film. Opening night, I just love. Sing Street will just have you just singing.
It will, won't it? Yeah.
It really will. Viva is a lovely closing film. Zootropolis is great fun. Disney film. It's Kung Fu Panda, I should mention as well, but that's just because I've an 8-year-old godson who just like, you know, quote Kung Fu Panda. I don't know, it's hard to pick out one. I'm trying to think of the foreign language films that actually, you know, maybe sort of like stand out. I mean, one of them that is absolutely fantastic is a film called Sunrise, which is an Indian film. It's like Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
And you know, for anybody who thinks that, you know, Indian cinema is Bollywood, it'll definitely capsize that particular impression. But the thing that I'd say to people is pick 2 films. One that you kind of know and plays to your strengths, it's what you like, and then pick something that's outside your comfort zone. Because that's a film festival.
Yeah.
You know, if you go to exactly what you want or you think you go to or you like, then, you know, it will deliver exactly what you think. More than likely, hopefully anyway. But if you go to see something that, as I said, you're opening yourself up to the idea that it might surprise you. And I think that's when, you know, my best experiences are when people who said things like, you know, I got the times wrong and I ended up at the 6 o'clock film instead of the 8 o'clock film.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, and you loved it. Yeah, you
Yeah.
just kind of like walked in off the street.
Yeah. Or my friend bought tickets for us to go to see the French film, and it was fantastic. I would never have gone. And I think, you know, in these days when everything, you know, we're talking on something that's going to go out, that's going to give people an indication of what's going to be, you know, in the festival. But there's all these ways with the clips and the advanced trailers that people have of insulating themselves from taking risks. And I think in film festivals, it's actually about that. It's about you actually saying, do you know what? I don't know anything about that German film.
Going in blind.
Go in blind. There's a Belgian film called Black, which is amazing. It's a really, really powerful film. And it's not going to come back. That's the other side of it. So loads of films in the festival are never going to come back.
Yeah, they'll never screen again.
Never see them again. And they're not going to be popping up on Sky Movies. They're not going to be popping up, heaven forbid, you know, late night on TG Cahar. They're gone, you know. And I think that's the thing. You know, if you see it in that way, it's a real opportunity rather than, as I said, the other way around, where you pick something that you know is coming out.
Yeah.
And
you're
then it comes out.
you're seeing it like 3 weeks before anyone else. Like, so what?
Yeah, and you're like, really? And the other thing about it is, you know, there is ultimate cred. Oh yeah, no, it's a fantastic film, but sorry, you're probably never going to get a chance to see it. You know, I mean, if you want bragging rights in the pub, there's about 5 films that, you know, you can
like High Rise and Green.
Well, High Rise, yeah. I mean, but Ben is now turned into this cult hero. I mean,
is.
It's amazing. Everybody is talking about Ben Wheatley.
Yeah.
And I was saying,
I'm really looking forward to it. Like that's
That's your number one,
that and Green Room are my 2 films.
Ah, Green
Sorry,
Room.
like, what about
Patrick
Green Room?
Stewart is fantastic.
And he's and like him playing a neo-Nazi, like
Brilliant.
that's
It's
I can't
absolutely
wait.
brilliant.
Like I can't wait. I cannot wait. Like I watch Star Trek like religiously, so just to seeing him as a neo-Nazi is just I have to.
But did you see Blue Ruin?
Of course, yeah, absolutely. I saw it at the festival. Like I saw it at the festival. Like
no, I mean, I think he's really talented. This guy.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like Blue Ruin as well. It was one of those things that like I somebody had said it to me. Oh yeah, it's really really good. It was like, ugh, all right, fine. I went in, knew nothing about it, hadn't seen the trailer, knew nothing about it, didn't know Jeremy Saulnier. Like it didn't have any name cast in it at all, and it was like, holy shit, this is amazing. And that's what I'm saying. Like these kind of films that, you know, don't have any kind of promotional
track
campaign,
record
or anything
like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to see Blue Ruin in Cannes, and I went because a friend of mine had actually contributed to the crowdfunding campaign.
Really?
Like I literally went because she said I gave $100 to this, and I went, oh, what would you give $100 to? Do you know what I mean? Or how would $100, you know, do you get your name on the end of it?
Yeah.
So I was literally going to watch the film so that at the end I would work out if her name was worthy
Was up on
of
it,
watching
yeah,
the
yeah,
credits.
yeah.
And I just thought it was amazing,
Yeah.
you know, and I just think, and it does go back to that idea about curiosity, do you know what I mean, and risk taking. I mean, that's what I think, you know, we've got loads of people who'll be coming in and they'll be talking about their films, and that in itself is the kind of the I suppose the sort of dynamic is people sort of, what's different is them talking rather than, as I said, you know, you're turning around and going, where are we going for a pint? You know, or will we get the car out now, or will we get the bus home, or whatever. But there is something about going in. You can turn the festival effectively into a surprise film. You can do
Yeah.
like a Russian roulette and just basically pick 5 films on the basis of the names or something, and then literally just go in and see what happens. You know, because there are like weird double bills. I mean, one of my favorite ones is well, for Lansbury it was really hard to try and track down what we would do, so we did Beauty and the Beast and the Manchurian Candidate, you know, which is like the most bizarre double bill. But equally, you could, as I said, you know, you've even got 2 there with High Rise and Green Room.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're the use of music, for instance, would be one way to actually link it. You know, and the whole way through the festival, there are sort of like films that are really, really clever, and lots of. We've got Chris Menges actually, who did Michael Collins.
Yeah.
And he'll be coming in to do cinematography sort of like talk. But it's those people talking about those sort of decisions that I find fascinating. We've Jan Kazmarek, who's the film composer who actually worked on Finding Neverland. And I think those guys are amazing. You know, how they actually just literally just describe, oh, you know, they gave me the film and they told me I had 3 weeks to basically put a score. And you go, how do you do that?
I remember that, like when Peter Morgan was over as well,
Yeah.
like, and he was talking about
Frost Nixon.
Yeah, Frost Nixon, and how it all just kind of came about, like, and he was just like so flippant about it, like, and it's like how do you get that process going? Like, how do you do that? Like, but
He's
yeah.
a great speaker, but
Isn't he?
it's-
Yeah.
David Hare's similar. He's gonna he did The Reader, and he obviously did The Hours.
Yeah.
And he's done a lot of sort of adapting his own work and others. But again, I mean, he makes it sound like it's just very, very easy. And
Yeah,
you know,
just so, like-
I just take the book and then I turn it into a screenplay, and you go,
How?
No, I'm really sure it's not that easy.
There's
Yeah,
more
yeah,
in the
yeah.
middle there. There's
Yeah.
more in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay. Final question. What's the surprise film? Give me a hint.
No, you named it earlier, and I think so. I think you're right. So it's really yours now to tell everybody what it is.
Is it?
Yeah. It's
Well, I won't ruin
absolutely
it,
that.
but I have a very good, like, we're going to do a piece on what we think the secret film will.
Okay.
And it will be my number 1, so
Okay.
people can read that.
It's a great. I'm really surprised that you got it so quickly as well.
I feel like you're just humouring me.
No,
Are
no,
you
no, no.
humouring me?
It's the earliest anyone's ever got it as well, which is really.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, on that bombshell, we'll leave it there. Okay, Grainne Humphreys, thanks, Mel.
No, thank you.
Thank you.